My name is Vivian Hayes, and I'm 74 years old. I spent 38 years as a crisis management consultant for Fortune 500 companies, teaching executives how to stay calm under pressure, how to think clearly when everyone around them is panicking, and how to make strategic decisions in the middle of chaos. I retired with $520,000 in savings, a paid-off house, and a reputation for being the calmest person in any room, no matter how dire the situation. Which is why what happened 4 weeks ago should have caused me to panic, but it didn't. And that calm response was exactly what my family wasn't expecting. I was having Sunday dinner with my daughter Cassandra and her husband Julian when Cassandra dropped the bomb. "Mom, we need to talk about something serious. It's about your money." I set down my fork. "What about my money?" Cassandra and Julian exchanged a look. Then Cassandra pulled out a folder. "Mom, Julian and I have been reviewing your finances. We're concerned about some irregularities we've discovered." Irregularities? Yes, large withdrawals, unusual transactions. Mom, over the past year, you've withdrawn nearly $150,000 from your accounts. That's a third of your total savings. I looked at Cassandra calmly. And, Mom, don't you understand what this means? You've lost $150,000. Someone's been stealing from you, or you've been scammed, or," she hesitated, "or you're making financial decisions you don't remember making." Julian jumped in. "Vivian, we're worried this might be early-stage dementia, impulse spending, poor decision-making, memory loss. We think you need help managing your finances before you lose everything." I sat there looking at my daughter and son-in-law. They were watching me closely, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to panic, to get upset, to ask desperately what happened to my money. But I didn't panic. I didn't get upset. I just sat there calm and took a sip of my water. "Mom," Cassandra's voice rose, "did you hear what I said? You've lost $150,000. I heard you. And you're not concerned. Should I be?" Cassandra's frustration was visible. "Yes, Mom, this is serious. We're talking about a third of your life savings gone. Don't you care?" Of course I care about my finances. Cassandra, I've been managing money successfully for 50 years. I'm well aware of my account balances and transactions. "Then you know about the $150,000. I know exactly where every penny of my money is, and always have." Julian leaned forward. "Vivian, with all due respect, if you knew about these withdrawals, why did you make them? What did you spend $150,000 on?" I looked at Julian calmly. "I don't recall saying I spent it." "Then where is it?" "That's my business." Cassandra's voice cracked. "Mom, please, we're trying to help you. If you're in trouble, if someone's blackmailing you or scamming you, you can tell us. We're your family. We want to protect you." "I don't need protection. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." "But Mom, $150,000 is my money, which I'm free to do with as I please. Cassandra, I appreciate your concern, but my finances are not your concern." Cassandra's expression shifted from worried to hurt. "Not my concern. Mom, I'm your daughter. If you're being taken advantage of, if you're making poor decisions because of cognitive decline." "I'm not in cognitive decline. My mind is sharp. My decisions are sound, and I'm not being taken advantage of." "Then prove it," Julian said. "Show us where the money went. Show us you're making rational decisions." I looked at Julian for a long moment. "I don't have to prove anything to you. Julian, you're not entitled to information about my financial decisions." The dinner ended awkwardly. Cassandra was upset. Julian was frustrated, and I remained completely, utterly calm. Because here's what Cassandra and Julian didn't know. I knew exactly what they were doing. I knew why they were suddenly so concerned about my finances. And I knew that their panic about my supposed financial crisis was actually part of a much larger scheme. They thought showing me that $150,000 was missing would make me panic, would make me turn to them for help, would make me vulnerable and dependent. But I didn't panic. and my refusal to panic was about to destroy whatever plan they had in motion. Because that $150,000 wasn't missing. It wasn't stolen. It wasn't spent impulsively. It was exactly where I wanted it to be, in a place Cassandra and Julian would never think to look. And my calm response to their discovery had just told them something they didn't want to hear. I was in complete control. They thought I would panic about the money, but I didn't. And that simple act of staying calm was about to reveal a betrayal so calculated, so long-running, that it would ultimately expose what my daughter and son-in-law had been planning for my entire retirement. But before I tell you what Cassandra and Julian were really after, before I reveal where that $150,000 actually was, and why I'd moved it, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Click it now. Then smash that like button, because this story is going to show you why staying calm in a crisis is the most powerful weapon you can have against people trying to manipulate you. Turn on those notifications, that bell icon, because you need to hear what happened when I refused to give my daughter and son-in-law the panic response they were counting on. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. What city? What state? What country? I want to know who's here with me today. Because what I discovered by staying calm when everyone expected me to panic, about what my family had been doing behind my back for years, it's going to shock you. It shocked me. And it taught me that sometimes the best response to manipulation is no response at all. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you about my relationship with Cassandra and Julian, and about the warning signs I'd noticed that led me to move $150,000 where they couldn't track it. To understand what happened, you need to understand my career and how it shaped the way I handle crisis situations. I worked in crisis management for nearly 4 decades. Companies would call me when they had disasters, product recalls, PR scandals, executive misconduct, financial fraud. My job was to come in, assess the situation calmly, and create a strategic response plan. The most important thing I learned in that career: panic is the enemy. When people panic, they make reactive decisions. They act on emotion rather than strategy. They give away power to whoever can stay calm. So I trained myself never to panic. No matter what crisis I walked into, no matter how bad the situation looked, I stayed calm, thought clearly, and acted strategically. That training served me well professionally, but I never imagined I'd need to use it against my own family. I raised Cassandra mostly alone. Her father, my husband Leonard, died when Cassandra was 12 years old. Cancer. It was brutal and fast. Leonard had been a journalist. We'd lived modestly on his salary and my consulting income. When he died, there was a $100,000 life insurance policy. I used it to pay off our mortgage and put the rest into savings for Cassandra's education. I continued working, raising Cassandra, and building my career. By the time I retired at 65, I'd saved $520,000 through careful investing and disciplined spending. Cassandra went to college, got a degree in marketing, and started her career. She did well for herself, but she also developed expensive tastes. When Cassandra was 28, she married Julian. He was 32, worked in sales, made decent money. They seemed happy. But I noticed early on that Cassandra and Julian spent money freely. New cars, expensive vacations, designer everything. They lived in a house that seemed too big for their income. Cassandra, are you sure you can afford this lifestyle? Mom, we're fine. Julian makes good money, I make good money. We can afford to enjoy life. But are you saving, building an emergency fund? We have some savings. Mom, don't worry about us. We're adults. We know what we're doing. Over the years, I watched Cassandra and Julian's spending continue unchecked. They always had the newest phones, the latest cars, the most expensive vacations. But I also noticed they never seemed to have money for emergencies. When their water heater broke, they called me for a $2,000 loan. When Julian's car needed major repairs, they borrowed $3,500. When they wanted to remodel their kitchen, they asked for $10,000. I lent them the money each time. They promised to pay me back, They never did. After about $25,000 in unpaid loans, I stopped lending them money. Cassandra, you owe me $25,000 already. I can't keep lending you money you never repay. Mom, we're going to pay you back. We're just going through a tight period right now, once Julian's commission check comes in. You've been saying that for 3 years. Cassandra, I love you, but I can't be your bank anymore. Cassandra was hurt. I can't believe you're choosing money over your daughter. I'm not choosing money over you. I'm setting a boundary. Cassandra, you and Julian need to learn to live within your means. After I stopped lending them money, I noticed a shift in how Cassandra treated me. She became more critical, more focused on my age. Mom, you're 72. That's getting up there. Have you thought about what happens if you get sick? I'm healthy. I see my doctor regularly. I'm fine. But what if something happens? Who would handle your finances, your medical decisions? I have legal documents in place. Power of attorney, healthcare directives, everything's organized. Who's your power of attorney? My attorney, Howard Brennan. He's handled my legal matters for 20 years. Cassandra frowned. An attorney? Mom, that's so impersonal. It should be family. It should be me. Howard is professional and objective. That's what I want. But Mom, I'm your daughter. Don't you trust me? This isn't about trust. It's about having proper professional management if I'm incapacitated. Cassandra didn't like that answer, and over the next year, she kept bringing it up. Every visit, she'd mention something about my age, my need for help, the importance of family managing my affairs. Then, about 18 months ago, something happened that made me suspicious. I received a call from my bank about unusual activity on my account. Someone had attempted to access my online banking from an unrecognized device. Mrs. Hayes, we blocked the access attempt and reset your password, but we wanted to alert you. Do you know anyone who might have tried to access your account? No, no one should be trying to access my account except me. The IP address traces to a location in your city. Do you have family members who might have been trying to help you with your banking? I had a terrible thought. Can you tell me what day and time the access attempt was made? Last Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. Last Tuesday at 2:15 p.m., Cassandra and Julian had been at my house. I'd stepped out to the store for about 30 minutes. They'd been alone in my house during that time. I didn't want to believe Cassandra would try to access my bank account without permission, but the timing was too coincidental. I started paying closer attention, and I noticed things. My mail sometimes seemed disturbed, like someone had gone through it and put it back carefully but not exactly right. Papers on my desk would be slightly moved, not dramatically, but enough that I could tell someone had looked through them. Once, I came home early from an appointment and found Cassandra in my home office. She jumped when I entered. Mom, you're home early. What are you doing in my office? I was just looking for a notepad. I wanted to write you a note. But there were notepads in the kitchen. Why would she need to come to my office? I started to suspect that Cassandra and Julian were snooping, trying to access information about my finances. That's when I made a decision. If they were looking for information about my money, I was going to make sure they found exactly what I wanted them to find, and nothing more. I moved $150,000 from my main accounts to a new account at a different bank. An account Cassandra and Julian didn't know existed. An account that didn't show up on the statements from my primary bank. I did it carefully over several months. $10,000 here, $15,000 there. Small enough not to raise immediate alarms, but large enough that over time, a significant portion of my savings would be moved to safety. I also set up additional security on all my accounts, password protections, two-factor authentication, alerts for any access attempts or large transactions. And I waited, because if Cassandra and Julian were really snooping into my finances, they'd eventually notice that $150,000 was missing. And when they did, I knew they'd confront me about it. They'd try to use my supposed financial crisis to manipulate me into giving them access to my accounts. But I also knew something they didn't: my training. 38 years of crisis management had taught me how to stay calm when everyone around me was panicking, how to read people's motivations, how to respond strategically rather than emotionally. So when Cassandra dropped that folder on the dinner table and told me I'd lost $150,000, I was ready. I stayed calm, didn't panic, didn't explain, didn't defend. Just calmly acknowledged that I knew exactly where my money was and that my finances were none of their business. And I watched their reactions carefully, because Cassandra and Julian's response to my calm would tell me everything I needed to know about what they were really after. If they were genuinely concerned about my well-being, they'd be relieved that I was in control and aware of my finances. But if they had ulterior motives, if they'd been counting on me panicking and turning to them for help, my calm would frustrate them, make them angry, force them to show their true intentions. 3 days after that Sunday dinner, Cassandra called me. Her voice was cold. "Mom, Julian and I have been talking. We're very concerned about you, about your judgment, about your refusal to explain where $150,000 went. Cassandra, I told you, my finances are my business. And we think that attitude proves you're not thinking clearly. Mom, we've consulted with an attorney. We're considering legal action to protect you from yourself." Legal action. That phrase told me everything. They weren't worried about me. They were positioning to take control of my money. "What kind of legal action?" I asked calmly. "Conservatorship. If you're not capable of managing your finances responsibly, we may need to petition the court to appoint someone to manage them for you. And you think you should be that someone. We're your family. We have your best interests at heart. Cassandra, let me be very clear. I am fully capable of managing my finances. I am not in cognitive decline. I am making sound decisions. And if you attempt to file for conservatorship, you will lose, and you'll destroy our relationship in the process. Mom, you're proving our point. This defensiveness, this paranoia, these are signs that you need help." "I'm not being defensive or paranoid. I'm being clear about my boundaries. Cassandra, drop this. Now." She hung up on me. I sat in my quiet house and knew exactly what was coming next. Cassandra and Julian were going to escalate. They were going to build a case for my supposed incompetence. They were going to try to take control of my $520,000, or what they thought was $370,000 after the missing $150,000. But they'd made a critical mistake. They'd assumed I would panic when confronted about the money. They'd assumed I'd be confused, scared, and vulnerable. Instead, I'd stayed calm, and that calm had told them I was in complete control. Now they'd have to either back down or escalate to legal action. And if they chose legal action, they'd discover something that would change everything. I wasn't the confused, vulnerable elderly woman they thought I was. I was a crisis management expert who'd spent nearly 4 decades outsmarting people in high-pressure situations. They thought I would panic about the money, but I didn't, and that was their first mistake. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 2 weeks after Cassandra's phone call threatening conservatorship, a process server arrived at my door with legal documents. I signed for them calmly, thanked the young man, and closed the door. Inside the envelope was exactly what I'd expected: a petition for conservatorship filed by Cassandra Hayes Morrison and Julian Morrison, requesting that the court appoint them as co-conservators of my person and estate due to my alleged inability to manage financial affairs and cognitive decline. I sat at my kitchen table and read through the 30-page document carefully. It was professionally prepared. They'd hired a good attorney. The petition painted a picture of a declining elderly woman making increasingly erratic financial decisions. According to their filing, I had withdrawn $150,000 with no reasonable explanation, refused to discuss my finances with concerned family members, Become defensive and paranoid when asked about money. Shown memory lapses and confusion about transactions. Demonstrated poor judgment and impulse control. They'd attached supporting documents, statements from Cassandra and Julian describing incidents of my supposed confusion, bank statements showing the $150,000 in withdrawals, a letter from their attorney explaining the urgent need for intervention. What they didn't have, and this was crucial, was any medical evidence. No doctor's statements, no cognitive assessments, no actual proof of decline. Because there was no decline, I was as sharp at 74 as I'd been at 54. I called my attorney, Howard Brennan. "Howard, I need to see you. Cassandra's filed a conservatorship petition." "I'll clear my schedule. Come in this afternoon." 3 hours later, I was sitting in Howard's office, showing him the petition. Howard read through it carefully, his expression growing increasingly stern. "Vivian, this is serious, but it's also weak. They have no medical evidence. Their entire case is based on the $150,000 withdrawal and your refusal to explain it to them." "Which I have every right not to explain." "Exactly. Vivian, you're under no obligation to discuss your finances with anyone, including your daughter. The fact that you chose not to isn't evidence of incompetence. It's evidence of appropriate boundaries." "So what do we do?" "We respond aggressively. We file a counterpetition. We get you a comprehensive cognitive evaluation from a qualified geriatric psychiatrist showing you're completely competent. We gather evidence of Cassandra and Julian's financial motivations. And Vivian, we expose what this really is, an attempted money grab disguised as concern." "I want to do more than just defend. Howard, I want to go on offense. I want to show the court exactly why Cassandra and Julian are really doing this." "What do you mean?" I pulled out a folder I'd brought with me. "I've been documenting things. The unauthorized access attempt to my online banking, the times I've caught Cassandra snooping in my office, the pattern of borrowing money they never repay. Howard, they owe me $25,000 in unpaid loans, and I have records of every transaction." Howard's eyes lit up. "This is good. This shows a pattern of financial exploitation by them, not incompetence by you. What else do you have?" "I hired a private investigator 3 months ago. When Cassandra started pressuring me about my finances, I wanted to know why. The investigator looked into Cassandra and Julian's financial situation." I pulled out the investigator's report. Howard read through it, his eyebrows rising. "They're drowning in debt. $85,000 in credit card balances, second mortgage on their house, car loans they're behind on. Vivian, they're facing foreclosure. They need money desperately. Which is why they suddenly care so much about my supposed cognitive decline. Howard, this isn't about protecting me. It's about accessing my $520,000 to solve their financial problems. We're going to destroy their petition. But Vivian, there's something I need to ask. The $150,000 you moved, where is it?" "In a trust account at a different bank. An account Cassandra and Julian don't know about." "Why did you move it?" "Because I suspected they were monitoring my main accounts. I wanted to protect a significant portion of my assets where they couldn't track it. Howard, if they'd managed to get emergency conservatorship before I could respond, they'd have immediate access to my known accounts. The $150,000 in the trust would remain safe." Howard smiled. "You were thinking strategically, protecting your assets from potential exploitation. Vivian, that's not evidence of cognitive decline. That's evidence of sophisticated financial planning." "That's what I thought. But Howard, there's more. I want you to look into whether Cassandra and Julian have done this before." "Done what?" "Targeted elderly people for conservatorship. My investigator found something interesting. Julian worked as a financial advisor 3 years ago. He was fired. The investigator couldn't find out why, but I'm wondering if there were complaints." "I'll look into it. Vivian, if Julian has a history of elder financial exploitation, that changes everything." Over the next week, Howard's team built our defense. I underwent a comprehensive cognitive evaluation with Dr. Sylvia Martinez, a respected geriatric psychiatrist. She tested my memory, reasoning, judgment, and decision-making abilities. After 4 hours of testing, Dr. Martinez smiled. "Mrs. Hayes, your cognitive function is excellent. You score in the 90th percentile for your age group. There's absolutely no evidence of dementia, cognitive impairment, or declined judgment. You're as sharp as someone 30 years younger." "Can you provide that in writing for the court?" "Absolutely. And Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to be very clear in my report. The allegations in this conservatorship petition are not supported by any medical evidence. Your decision not to discuss your finances with family members is appropriate boundary setting, not confusion. Your strategic movement of assets shows sophisticated financial planning, not impulsivity. If anything, you demonstrate exceptional capacity for self-protection." Dr. Martinez's report was devastating to Cassandra and Julian's case, but Howard found something even better. "Vivian, I looked into Julian's employment history. He was fired from his financial advisor job for violating ethics rules. Specifically, he was accessing elderly clients' accounts without authorization and making recommendations that benefited him through commissions rather than benefiting the clients." "That's exactly what I suspected. There's more. One of those elderly clients, an 80-year-old woman named Dorothy Chen, filed a complaint alleging Julian had pressured her to give him power of attorney and then used it to transfer $40,000 to himself. The case was settled privately. She got her money back, Julian was fired, and part of the settlement was that the details would remain confidential." "Can we use this?" "I've subpoenaed Julian's employment records. And Vivian, I contacted Mrs. Chen's attorney. She's willing to testify about Julian's pattern of targeting vulnerable elderly people for financial exploitation. The confidentiality clause in her settlement doesn't prevent her from testifying in court proceedings. So we're not just defending against the conservatorship. We're exposing Julian as a predator who specifically targets elderly people." "Exactly." The conservatorship hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. During that time, Cassandra called me twice. Both times, her tone was a mix of pleading and threatening. "Mom, you don't have to fight this. If you just explain where the money went, we could drop the petition. We're trying to protect you, but you're making this so difficult." "Cassandra, I don't need to explain my financial decisions to you, and I'm not making this difficult. You're the one who filed a fraudulent conservatorship petition." "Fraudulent? Mom, you're sick. You don't realize how confused you've become, but the court will see it. The judge will appoint us as your conservators, and then we'll make sure your money is protected." "Protected from whom?" "From scammers, from your own poor judgment. Mom, this is for your own good." "No, Cassandra, this is for your mortgage payment, for Julian's credit card debt, for the foreclosure you're facing. I know about your financial situation. I know you're desperate for money. And I know that's the real reason behind this conservatorship petition." There was silence on the other end. Then Cassandra's voice turned cold. "You had us investigated, your own daughter. You filed a legal petition claiming I'm incompetent. I defended myself by gathering facts. Cassandra, you started this fight. Don't be surprised when I fight back." "You're going to regret this, Mom. When the court gives us conservatorship, when we have control of your accounts, you're going to wish you'd cooperated." "That's not going to happen. Cassandra, you have no medical evidence. You have no actual proof of incompetence. All you have is a missing $150,000 that I moved strategically to protect my assets from exactly what you're trying to do now." "Protect your assets. Mom, you're paranoid. You're hiding money because you're confused and scared." "No, I'm protecting money because I correctly assessed that my daughter and son-in-law were trying to gain access to my accounts. Cassandra, every decision I've made has been rational, strategic, and appropriate. The court will see that." She hung up, and I knew she was panicking now, because the conservatorship petition had been their trump card, their way to force control over my finances, and it was falling apart. The hearing took place in a small courtroom. Cassandra and Julian sat with their attorney, a smooth-talking man named Vincent Shaw. I sat with Howard and felt completely calm. Cassandra and Julian's attorney went first. He presented their petition, describing me as a vulnerable elderly woman whose judgment has deteriorated to the point where she can no longer safely manage her significant assets. He called Cassandra as his first witness. She took the stand looking worried and sad, a daughter concerned about her declining mother. Miss Morrison, please describe your concerns about your mother's capacity. My mother has become increasingly forgetful and confused. She makes financial decisions she can't explain. She withdrew $150,000 from her accounts and refuses to tell anyone where it went. When we try to help her, she becomes defensive and paranoid, accusing us of trying to steal from her. Has your mother always been this way? No, this is new. Over the past year, she's changed. She's not the sharp, capable woman she used to be. It breaks my heart to see her like this. It was a convincing performance, but then Howard stood up to cross-examine. Miss Morrison, you testified that your mother is forgetful and confused. Has she missed any appointments? Forgotten to pay bills? Gotten lost while driving? Well, no, but has she had any accidents? Any incidents where her confusion led to harm? Not that I know of, but that doesn't mean. Has any medical professional diagnosed your mother with dementia or cognitive impairment? Cassandra hesitated. We haven't been able to get her to see a doctor about it. So no medical professional has evaluated her and found cognitive decline. No, but Miss Morrison, you owe your mother $25,000 in unpaid loans, correct? Cassandra's face reddened. We're going to pay that back. When? You've owed her that money for 3 years. When our financial situation improves. Miss Morrison, are you currently facing foreclosure on your home? That's not relevant. Answer the question. Are you facing foreclosure? Yes, but that has nothing to do with Mom's capacity. Doesn't it? You're in desperate need of money. Your mother has $520,000 in assets. If you were appointed conservator, you'd have access to those assets. Isn't that what this is really about? No, we're trying to protect her. From whom? From making her own decisions about her own money. Vincent Shaw objected, but the damage was done. The court could see Cassandra's financial motivation clearly. Then Howard called Julian to testify. Julian took the stand looking defensive. Mr. Morrison, you used to work as a financial advisor, correct? Yes. You were fired from that position 3 years ago, weren't you? I left that job. You were fired for ethics violations, specifically for accessing elderly clients' accounts without proper authorization. Isn't that true? Julian's jaw tightened. There were some disagreements about procedures. Did you or did you not settle a complaint from a client named Dorothy Chen, who alleged you transferred $40,000 from her account to yourself after pressuring her to give you power of attorney? That matter was settled confidentially. The settlement required you to return the money and resign, correct? I can't discuss the terms. Mr. Morrison, you have a history of targeting elderly people for financial exploitation. Now you're attempting to gain conservatorship over your mother-in-law's $520,000 in assets. Do you see why the court might question your motives? Julian didn't answer. He just stared at Howard with barely concealed anger. Then Howard called his witnesses. Dr. Martinez testified about my excellent cognitive function. My attorney Howard testified about my sophisticated estate planning and appropriate boundary setting. Mrs. Dorothy Chen testified about Julian's previous exploitation of her. Finally, Howard called me to testify. Mrs. Hayes, please tell the court about the $150,000 withdrawal that's at the center of this petition. I moved $150,000 from my primary bank accounts to a trust account at a different institution. I did this strategically, over several months, to protect a significant portion of my assets. Protect them from what? From my daughter and son-in-law. I'd noticed signs that they were attempting to access information about my finances without my permission. I suspected they might try to gain control of my accounts, so I moved a substantial portion of my money where they couldn't track it. Why didn't you explain this to Cassandra and Julian when they confronted you? Because I had no obligation to explain my financial decisions to them. My finances are my business. Their demand that I explain where my money went was inappropriate. My refusal to explain was appropriate boundary setting. Mrs. Hayes, do you believe you're capable of managing your own finances? Absolutely. I've managed them successfully for 50 years. I'm in excellent cognitive health. I make rational, strategic decisions. The conservatorship petition is not about protecting me. It's about Cassandra and Julian accessing my money to solve their debt problems. The judge asked me several questions about my daily activities, my financial management, my understanding of my accounts. I answered each one clearly, calmly, demonstrating complete competence. When the testimony concluded, the judge didn't even deliberate. He ruled from the bench. I've heard enough. Mrs. Vivian Hayes has demonstrated complete competence in managing her affairs. She is cognitively sound, as confirmed by expert medical testimony. Her decision to move $150,000 to protect her assets from potential exploitation by family members was not evidence of impaired judgment. It was evidence of excellent judgment. The petitioners have presented no credible medical evidence of incompetence. What they have presented is evidence of their own financial desperation and motivation to access Mrs. Hayes's substantial assets. This conservatorship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a protective order. Cassandra Morrison and Julian Morrison are prohibited from filing any future conservatorship petitions regarding Vivian Hayes without substantial medical evidence from qualified professionals. Any violation of this order will result in sanctions. Mrs. Hayes, you are free to manage your affairs as you see fit. I commend you for protecting yourself from what appears to be an attempted exploitation by your own family. The judge banged his gavel. Cassandra looked devastated. Julian looked furious. As I left the courtroom with Howard, Cassandra called out, "Mom, please, can we talk?" I turned to look at her. "There's nothing to talk about, Cassandra. You tried to have me declared incompetent so you could steal my money. That's not something we come back from." "We weren't trying to steal. We were trying to help." "You were trying to help yourselves to my $520,000. Cassandra, you filed legal documents claiming I was cognitively impaired. You lied to a court about my capacity. You attempted to strip me of my legal rights to control my own life. And you did it because you're in debt and saw my savings as the solution." "Mom, I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for anything?" "It used to. But Cassandra, you destroyed that when you chose money over integrity. When you decided that your financial problems mattered more than my dignity and independence." I walked away, leaving my daughter standing in the courthouse hallway. They thought I would panic about the money when they confronted me about the $150,000. They thought I'd be confused, scared, desperate for their help. But I didn't panic. I stayed calm, and that calm destroyed their entire scheme. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 3 days after the conservatorship hearing, I received an email from Cassandra. The subject line read, "I'm sorry." I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know what Julian and I did was unforgivable, but I need you to understand we were desperate. We're losing our house. We're drowning in debt. Julian convinced me that if we could just access your money temporarily, we could fix everything and pay you back. He said you'd never even notice because you have so much. I know that doesn't excuse what we did, but Mom, I need you to know, it wasn't about not loving you. It was about being so desperate I stopped thinking clearly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I read the email 3 times. Part of me wanted to believe Cassandra was genuinely remorseful, that she'd been manipulated by Julian, that she hadn't fully understood what they were doing. But another part of me, the crisis management consultant who'd spent decades reading people and situations, recognized the email for what it was, Another manipulation attempt. An appeal to my emotions. A way to keep lines of communication open in case there was still a chance to access my money. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to Howard with a note. Document this. She's admitting they were trying to access my money. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Julian. This one was different in tone, angry. Accusatory. Vivian, what you did in that courtroom was vindictive and cruel. You destroyed Cassandra's relationship with her mother over money. You humiliated us publicly. You brought up confidential matters from my past that had been settled. And for what? To prove you're in control. To punish us for caring about you. You won your legal battle, but you've lost your daughter. I hope your money keeps you warm at night because you'll be spending the rest of your life alone. Cassandra is devastated. She cries every day about losing you. But you don't care, do you? All you care about is your precious $520,000. You're a bitter, selfish old woman, and you deserve to die alone. I read Julian's letter once and felt nothing but confirmation that I'd made the right choice. This was who Julian really was, vindictive, manipulative, willing to use emotional attacks when his schemes failed. I filed the letter with Howard. Keep this, it shows his true character. Vivian, this could be considered harassment. Do you want to pursue a restraining order? Not yet, but keep it on file in case he escalates. Over the next month, Cassandra tried reaching me several times. Phone calls I didn't answer. Text messages I didn't respond to. A handwritten letter delivered to my mailbox. Each communication followed the same pattern, apologies mixed with accusations. I'm sorry, but you overreacted. I know we were wrong, but you didn't have to destroy us in court. I love you, but you're being unreasonable. Classic manipulation. Acknowledge wrongdoing while simultaneously blaming the victim for the consequences of their own actions. I didn't engage with any of it, because I'd learned in my career that engaging with manipulators only gives them more ammunition. Silence was more powerful than any response I could give. Then, 6 weeks after the hearing, something unexpected happened. I received a call from a woman named Bethany Lawrence. Mrs. Hayes, my name is Bethany Lawrence. I'm a social worker with Adult Protective Services. I'm calling about a report we received. My stomach sank. What kind of report? Someone filed a complaint alleging that you're living in unsafe conditions, that your home is in disrepair, that you're not properly caring for yourself. Mrs. Hayes, I'm required to investigate all reports of potential elder self-neglect. Would you be willing to meet with me so I can assess your situation? Of course. When would you like to come? Would tomorrow at 2 p.m. work? That's fine. After hanging up, I knew exactly who had filed the report. Cassandra and Julian, unable to win in court, were now trying to use Adult Protective Services as another avenue to establish that I was incapable of caring for myself. I called Howard. They've escalated, filed a false report with Adult Protective Services. That's illegal. Filing a false report is a crime. Vivian, document everything. When the social worker comes, make sure she sees that your home is clean, you're well-groomed, and you're completely capable. Get her to put in writing that the report was unfounded. The next day, Bethany Lawrence arrived at my house. She was a woman in her 40s, professional and kind. Mrs. Hayes, thank you for meeting with me. I need to ask you some questions and observe your living situation. This is just standard procedure when we receive reports. I understand. Please come in. Bethany walked through my house, taking notes. My home was immaculate. I'd always been meticulous about cleanliness. The kitchen was well stocked. The bathrooms were clean. There were no safety hazards, no signs of hoarding, no indication of any problems whatsoever. Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask, do you have any difficulty with daily activities? Bathing, dressing, cooking, managing medications? None at all. I'm in excellent health. I see my doctor regularly. I manage all my own affairs. The report alleged that you were confused and unable to care for yourself properly. The report is false. It was filed by my daughter and son-in-law, who recently lost a conservatorship petition against me. They're attempting to use your agency as another way to establish incompetence that doesn't exist. Bethany's expression shifted. I see. Mrs. Hayes, are you aware of the conservatorship petition? I was the respondent. The petition was denied. The judge found I was completely competent and that my daughter and son-in-law were attempting to access my finances fraudulently. Do you have documentation of that? I showed Bethany the court order from the conservatorship hearing. She read it carefully. Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to close this case as unfounded. Your home is in excellent condition. You're clearly capable of caring for yourself. And the context of the recent conservatorship petition suggests this report was made in bad faith. Can you document that the report was false? Absolutely. And Mrs. Hayes, filing a false report with Adult Protective Services is a crime. If you want to pursue charges against whoever filed this report, you have grounds to do so. I'll consult with my attorney. Thank you for your professionalism. After Bethany left, I called Howard again. The APS investigation is closed. The social worker confirmed the report was false and made in bad faith. She said I can press charges. Do you want to? I thought about it. Not yet, but Howard, I want to be proactive. What can we do to prevent Cassandra and Julian from continuing to harass me and file false complaints? We can file for a restraining order based on the pattern of harassment. The conservatorship petition, the angry letter from Julian, and now the false APS report. That's a pattern. We can ask the court to prohibit them from contacting you or filing any further complaints or legal actions without legitimate grounds. Let's do it. 2 weeks later, we were back in court, this time for a restraining order hearing. I presented evidence of the harassment, Julian's angry letter, the multiple ignored attempts at contact, and the false APS report. The judge granted a 3-year restraining order prohibiting Cassandra and Julian from contacting me directly or indirectly, from filing any legal petitions regarding me without substantial evidence, and from filing reports with government agencies about me without legitimate cause. Violation would result in arrest and criminal charges. When the restraining order was served, I received one final email from Cassandra. The subject line, "You've won. Are you happy?" Mom, you got your restraining order. You've legally cut me out of your life. Julian and I are losing our house next month. We're being foreclosed on. We're filing for bankruptcy. Our lives are destroyed. And you just sat back and watched it happen. You could have helped us. You have more money than you'll ever need. But you chose to protect your wealth over protecting your daughter. I hope you enjoy your money, Mom. I hope it gives you everything I couldn't. Goodbye. I read the email and felt a mix of emotions. Sadness that Cassandra was in such a difficult situation, but also clarity that her situation was the result of her own choices, years of overspending, borrowing without repaying, and ultimately attempting to steal from me through legal manipulation. I didn't respond. The restraining order prohibited contact, and I wasn't going to violate it. But I also did something Cassandra didn't expect. I called Howard. Howard, I want to set up a trust. Not for Cassandra, she won't get anything directly, but for her children, if she ever has any. I want to make sure any grandchildren I might have are provided for, even if their mother and I never reconcile. That's generous, considering what she did. It's not for her. It's for innocent children who shouldn't suffer because of their parents' mistakes. But Howard, the trust has conditions. Cassandra and Julian can't access it. It goes directly to education expenses for the children, and only if Cassandra demonstrates at least 5 years of financial stability and responsibility. So you're incentivizing better behavior without rewarding the bad behavior. Exactly. 3 months after the restraining order was issued, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Cassandra and Julian had divorced. Julian had apparently blamed Cassandra for the failed conservatorship attempt, claiming she'd been too emotional and revealed too much during her testimony. Cassandra had moved to a small apartment and was working 2 jobs to rebuild her finances. Julian had moved to another state. I felt a small amount of relief that Cassandra was away from Julian's influence, but I didn't reach out. The restraining order was still in effect, and more importantly, I wasn't ready. A year after the conservatorship hearing, I received a letter from Cassandra's divorce attorney. Inside was a settlement document showing that as part of the divorce, Julian had been ordered to pay Cassandra $30,000, his share of their marital assets after debts were settled. Attached was a handwritten note from Cassandra. "Mom, I know the restraining order says we can't have contact. I'm sending this through my attorney so it's not a violation. I wanted you to know I'm using the $30,000 from my divorce settlement to pay you back, all of it. The $25,000 I owe you in loans, plus $5,000 in interest. My attorney will send you a check. I don't expect this to change anything between us. I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed you to know I'm trying to make things right. I'm working on myself. I'm in therapy. I'm learning to manage money responsibly. I'm becoming the person you tried to teach me to be. I'm sorry it took losing you to finally learn the lesson." 2 days later, a check for $30,000 arrived from Cassandra's divorce attorney with a note. Restitution payment from Cassandra Morrison to Vivian Hayes for outstanding loans plus interest. I stared at the check for a long time. $30,000 was everything Cassandra had gotten from her divorce. She was giving it all to me instead of using it to rebuild her own life. That was different from the apologies and manipulations before. This was action. This was sacrifice. This was genuine restitution. I called Howard. I received $30,000 from Cassandra through her divorce attorney. She's paying back everything she owes me. "That's significant. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to cash the check. She owes me that money. But Howard, I'm also going to do something else. I want to set up a meeting with Cassandra, a mediated meeting with you present. I want to talk to her. The restraining order can be modified if both parties agree. Howard, I'm not ready to reconcile fully, but I'm ready to have a conversation, to see if there's any possibility of rebuilding something." 2 weeks later, I sat in Howard's conference room across from Cassandra. She looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more present. Less of the entitled princess I'd seen at the conservatorship hearing, more like the daughter I'd raised. "Mom, thank you for meeting with me. I know you didn't have to. The $30,000 you sent, that was everything from your divorce settlement, wasn't it?" "Yes, I could have used it to get a better apartment or buy a reliable car. But paying you back was more important. Mom, I owed you that money. And more than the money, I owed you accountability for what I did." "Tell me about the therapy. What are you working on?" "Everything, my relationship with money, my tendency to blame others when things go wrong, the way I let Julian manipulate me. Mom, I'm learning that I spent my whole adult life living beyond my means and then resenting you for not bailing me out. That was wrong. You didn't owe me financial support. You'd already given me so much." "What about Julian? Do you understand now what he was?" "A con artist who targeted me because I had access to you. Mom, I've learned that Julian had done this before, not just with Mrs. Chen who testified, with other women. He finds women with wealthy parents and marries them to get access to family money. I was just another mark." "How does that make you feel?" "Stupid, angry, ashamed, but also grateful that you stopped him. Mom, if you hadn't stayed calm that night at dinner, if you'd panicked about the missing $150,000 like Julian expected, we would have gotten conservatorship. Julian had the whole plan mapped out. We'd get control of your accounts, transfer money to pay your bills, and by the time anyone figured out what was happening, the money would be gone." So my calm response destroyed the plan. Completely. Julian was furious. He kept saying you were supposed to panic, supposed to beg us for help, supposed to prove you couldn't handle your finances. Your calm meant you were in complete control. It meant we had no case. I sat with that for a moment. "Cassandra, I moved that $150,000 because I suspected something. I didn't know exactly what, but my instincts told me you and Julian were planning something." "Your instincts were right. Mom, you've spent your whole career reading people and situations. Of course you saw through us. The question is, have you really changed? Or is this another manipulation?" Cassandra looked me in the eye. "I've changed. I can't prove it with words. I can only prove it through years of different behavior. Mom, I'm not asking you to trust me again. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for a relationship. I'm just asking for a chance to show you over time that I'm becoming someone worthy of being your daughter again. We talked for 2 more hours, about her therapy, about her new understanding of money, about her job and her small apartment, about the lessons she was learning. At the end of the meeting, I made a decision. Cassandra, I'm going to modify the restraining order to allow limited contact. We can talk on the phone once a month. We can meet for coffee occasionally. But there are conditions. We don't discuss money, yours or mine. If you ask me for money, even once, all contact ends permanently. If you violate my boundaries in any way, all contact ends. This is your one chance to rebuild trust slowly and carefully. I understand. Thank you, Mom. That's more than I deserve. Over the next year, Cassandra kept her word. We talked monthly. She never asked for money. She shared updates about her progress. She'd gotten promoted at work, built a small emergency fund, started saving for retirement. She also did something that surprised me. She started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping elderly people protect themselves from financial exploitation. Mom, I wanted to do something good with what I learned from trying to do something terrible to you. I help seniors set up protections. I teach them warning signs of exploitation. I help them understand their rights. It's my way of making amends for what I tried to do. 2 years after our first mediated meeting, I invited Cassandra to my house for dinner. The first time she'd been in my home since before the conservatorship attempt. She walked through the door looking nervous. Mom, thank you for inviting me. I wanted to talk to you about something. I've set up a trust. It's not for you, you won't have access to it. But if you ever have children, the trust will fund their education. College, graduate school, whatever they need. Cassandra's eyes filled with tears. Mom, I don't deserve. It's not for you, it's for my future grandchildren if they exist. Children shouldn't suffer because of their parents' mistakes. But Cassandra, there are conditions. You have to demonstrate 5 years of financial stability. No debt, regular savings, responsible money management. If you can do that, the trust activates. I'll do it. Mom, I'll prove I can handle money responsibly. I know you will. Because Cassandra, you've already proven something more important. You've proven you can change. You can admit when you're wrong. You can make amends. That's harder than managing money. That's character. We had dinner together. We talked about her work, her volunteer activities, her life. We didn't talk about the conservatorship attempt or the money or the betrayal. We talked like a mother and daughter rebuilding a relationship, slowly and carefully, on a foundation of honesty instead of manipulation. They thought I would panic about the money when they confronted me about the missing $150,000. They thought my panic would give them the opening they needed to take control of my life and my finances. But I didn't panic. I stayed calm. And that calm destroyed their scheme, exposed their motives, and ultimately forced Cassandra to face who she'd become and decide to change. My refusal to panic wasn't just about protecting my money. It was about protecting my dignity, my independence, and my right to make my own decisions about my own life. And in the end, that calm response didn't just save my finances. It saved my daughter by forcing her to hit bottom and rebuild herself into someone better. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. 5 years after the conservatorship hearing, I received an invitation in the mail. It was for a conference on elder financial protection, and the organizers wanted me to speak about my experience. Mrs. Hayes, we've heard about your case through legal circles. Your strategic response to an attempted conservatorship has become something of a teaching example. We'd like you to share your story with professionals who work in elder protection, attorneys, social workers, financial advisors. Would you be willing to speak? I thought about it for several days. Sharing my story publicly meant revisiting painful memories. It meant admitting that my own daughter had tried to steal from me. It meant exposing family dysfunction to strangers. But it also meant helping others, teaching people the warning signs of financial exploitation, showing elderly people that they had the right and the ability to fight back. I accepted the invitation. The conference was held 3 months later in a hotel ballroom filled with about 200 professionals. I stood at the podium looking out at the audience and took a deep breath. My name is Vivian Hayes. 5 years ago, my daughter and son-in-law filed a conservatorship petition against me. They claimed I was cognitively impaired and unable to manage my finances. The petition was denied. Today, I want to tell you why I won and what I learned about staying calm in a crisis. For the next 45 minutes, I told my story. About noticing the warning signs of Cassandra and Julian's interest in my finances. About strategically moving $150,000 to protect it. About the dinner where they confronted me about the missing money. When Cassandra told me I'd lost $150,000, she was watching my face carefully, waiting for me to panic, waiting for me to say, "Oh no, what happened? I don't remember, please help me." That panic would have been the evidence they needed. It would have proven I was confused, scared, unable to manage my affairs. But I didn't panic. I stayed completely calm. I said, "I know exactly where my money is." And that calm response destroyed their entire strategy. Because how could I be incompetent if I was completely in control? How could I need help if I was calm and confident? My career taught me that panic is the enemy in any crisis. When you panic, you make reactive decisions. You give power to whoever can stay calm. So I stayed calm, not because the situation wasn't serious, but because staying calm was the most strategic response. After my talk, dozens of people came up to speak with me. Attorneys asked about legal strategies. Social workers asked about warning signs of exploitation. And several elderly people thanked me for showing them that they could fight back. One woman, probably in her 80s, grabbed my hand. "My son has been pressuring me to add him to my bank accounts. He says it's for convenience, but something feels wrong. After hearing your story, I know what to do. I'm going to trust my instincts and say no." "Good," I told her. "Trust your instincts. And if he gets angry when you say no, that tells you everything you need to know about his motives." After the conference, I was contacted by several organizations asking me to speak at other events. I became something of an advocate for elder financial protection, not because I'd sought out the role, but because my experience had given me a platform and a message. Over the next 2 years, I spoke at legal conferences, senior centers, and community organizations. I developed a presentation called The Power of Calm, protecting yourself from financial exploitation, that taught people how to recognize manipulation tactics and respond strategically rather than emotionally. The presentation always included the same key points. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong about a family member's interest in your finances, it probably is wrong. Set boundaries. You don't owe anyone, even family, explanations about your financial decisions. Stay calm when confronted. Panic is what manipulators count on. Calm destroys their strategy. Protect your assets strategically. If you suspect someone is trying to access your money, move it somewhere they can't track. Document everything. Keep records of conversations, attempted access to your accounts, and any pressure to give financial control. Get professional help. Consult attorneys and financial advisors who can provide objective advice. Meanwhile, Cassandra continued her own journey of transformation. She'd been managing money responsibly for 5 years now. She had an emergency fund of $15,000. She was contributing to a retirement account. She'd bought a modest used car with cash. She was living within her means. She also continued her volunteer work at the legal aid clinic, where she'd helped dozens of elderly people protect themselves from family members trying to exploit them. "Mom, I met a woman yesterday who reminded me of you. Her daughter was pressuring her to sign a power of attorney. The woman didn't want to, but she felt guilty saying no. I told her about what I did to you, how I tried to take your money, how you stayed calm and fought back. Mom," she cried. She said hearing my story gave her permission to protect herself without feeling like a bad mother. "You told her the whole story, about trying to get conservatorship." "Yes, I told her everything. How I was drowning in debt and saw your money as the solution. How Julian manipulated me. How we planned to use the conservatorship to access your accounts. How your calm response destroyed our plan. Mom, I don't hide what I did. I use it to help others. That takes courage. Cassandra, I'm proud of you. On the 5-year anniversary of the conservatorship hearing, Cassandra came to my house with an envelope. Mom, I wanted to show you something. It's my financial statement. 5 years of responsible money management. No debt except my mortgage. Emergency fund. Retirement savings. Budget I stick to. I've met the conditions for the education trust you set up. I looked at the documents. She was right. 5 years of stability. Proof that she genuinely changed her relationship with money. Cassandra, you've done more than meet the conditions. You've transformed your life. Because you forced me to. Mom, if you'd panicked that night at dinner, if you'd let us get conservatorship, I never would have learned these lessons. I would have spent your money solving my problems, and I'd be in the same situation now that I was in then. You staying calm and fighting back saved me from myself. I didn't do it to save you. I did it to protect myself. I know, but it saved me anyway. Mom, can I ask you something? Do you forgive me? I thought about that question. Did I forgive Cassandra? I'm working on it. Cassandra, you tried to steal my life savings and have me declared incompetent. That's not something I can just forget. But I can acknowledge that you've done the work to change, that you've made genuine amends, that you're not the same person who filed that conservatorship petition. That's enough. Mom, that's more than enough. Cassandra, I want to tell you something. The $150,000 I moved, the money that started all of this, I've decided what to do with it. What? I'm donating it to organizations that help elderly people fight financial exploitation, legal aid clinics, elder advocacy groups, financial literacy programs. That $150,000 is going to help hundreds of people protect themselves from what you and Julian tried to do to me. Cassandra's eyes filled with tears. That's perfect, Mom. That money I tried to steal is going to help protect other people from thieves like I was. Exactly. Over the next year, I distributed the $150,000 to various organizations. Each donation came with my story and a request that the money be used specifically for elder financial protection programs. One of those organizations, Elder Justice Alliance, asked if I'd join their board of directors. Mrs. Hayes, your experience and your advocacy work have been invaluable. We'd be honored to have you help guide our organization. I accepted. At 79 years old, I found myself busier than I'd been in retirement, serving on a board, giving talks, and working to protect elderly people from the kind of exploitation I'd faced. Cassandra often came with me to my speaking engagements. She'd tell her side of the story, how desperation and manipulation had led her to attempt something terrible, how her mother's calm response had forced her to face consequences, how those consequences had ultimately saved her. I'm a cautionary tale, she'd tell audiences. I'm the daughter who tried to steal from her mother, but I'm also proof that people can change, that facing consequences can lead to growth, that it's never too late to become better. One evening, after we'd spoken together at a senior center, an elderly man approached us. Mrs. Hayes, Miss Morrison, thank you for sharing your story. My son has been pressuring me to give him power of attorney. After hearing what you went through, I know what my answer is going to be. After he walked away, Cassandra turned to me. Mom, we've probably helped a dozen people tonight. A dozen people who won't be exploited by their own families because they heard our story. That's something good coming from something terrible. Do you think we'll ever be fully okay again? Our relationship? I thought about that. I don't know if we'll ever be what we were before. Too much has happened. But Cassandra, we're building something new, something based on honesty and boundaries and realistic expectations. That might be better than what we had before. I think it is better. Mom, I know you now in a way I didn't before. I know you're strong. I know you won't be manipulated or controlled. I know you'll protect yourself even if it means standing up to your own daughter. And knowing that makes me respect you in a way I didn't when I thought you'd always rescue me from my problems. 7 years after the conservatorship hearing, I turned 81. Cassandra threw me a small birthday party at her apartment, the first time we'd celebrated my birthday together since before the legal battle. She'd invited a few of my friends and some of her colleagues from the legal aid clinic. The apartment was modest but warm. The food was simple but made with care. And Cassandra gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes. To my mom, Vivian Hayes, the strongest woman I know. 7 years ago, I tried to steal from her. I tried to have her declared incompetent. I tried to take everything she'd worked for. And you know what she did? She stayed calm. She fought back. She won. And then, and this is the part that still amazes me, she gave me a chance to change. Not a free pass, not immediate forgiveness, but a chance to prove, through years of different behavior, that I could become better. Mom, you taught me more by fighting me than you ever could have by giving in to me. Thank you for staying calm. Thank you for fighting back. And thank you for eventually, slowly, letting me rebuild a relationship with you. Happy birthday. Everyone raised their glasses, and I looked at my daughter, the woman who'd tried to destroy me and who'd spent 7 years rebuilding herself, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope for our future. After the party, as Cassandra was walking me to my car, she said something that brought everything full circle. Mom, I teach a financial literacy class at the legal aid clinic now. Last week, one of my students, an elderly woman whose son was pressuring her for money, asked me what she should do. I told her what you would say: trust your instincts, set boundaries, stay calm, and if necessary, protect yourself even if it means standing up to family. She listened. She set boundaries with her son. And Mom, she was so relieved. She'd been feeling guilty for not wanting to give him money. I gave her permission to protect herself without guilt. You're teaching what I taught you. Not just what you taught me with words, what you taught me by example, by staying calm when I expected you to panic, by fighting back when I expected you to give in, by protecting yourself when I thought you'd prioritize keeping me happy. Mom, you showed me what strength looks like, and now I'm teaching others. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened. About the dinner 7 years ago when Cassandra had confronted me about the missing $150,000. About the moment when I'd chosen to stay calm instead of panicking. About how that single decision had changed everything. They thought I would panic about the money. They thought my panic would make me vulnerable, dependent, easy to control. They thought I'd beg them for help, proving I couldn't manage my own affairs. But I didn't panic. I stayed calm. And that calm destroyed their scheme, exposed their motives, forced accountability, and ultimately led to transformation, both mine and Cassandra's. I'd spent 38 years teaching corporate executives how to manage crises, but I'd never imagined I'd need to use those skills against my own family. That the biggest crisis of my life would come from my daughter's attempt to steal my savings and my independence. But that crisis had also taught me something profound. Calm is power. Panic gives control to others. Calm keeps control with you. When people try to manipulate you, they're counting on emotional reactions. Fear, confusion, desperation. They want you off balance, reactive, making decisions from panic rather than strategy. The most powerful response to manipulation is calm. Strategic calm. Thoughtful calm. Calm that comes from confidence in yourself and your ability to handle whatever crisis you're facing. They thought I would panic about the money. But I didn't panic. I stayed calm. I thought strategically. I protected myself. I fought back. I won. And in winning, I not only saved my finances and my independence, I also saved my daughter by forcing her to face consequences that led to genuine change. Now, at 81, I look back on that dinner 7 years ago as the moment that defined my retirement. Not because of what Cassandra and Julian tried to do to me, but because of how I responded. I could have panicked, could have broken down, could have desperately asked what happened to my money. Instead, I stayed calm, said, I know exactly where my money is. And in that moment of strategic calm, I took control of the situation and refused to give it up. That calm was my weapon, my shield, my power. They thought I would panic about the money. But I didn't. And that made all the difference. If this story touched you, Please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading.